video. Here we are in Providence. And what we have here is a fire escape, pre-existing, non-conforming. This fire escape must be kept structurally sound, must be kept painted. The code here is the NFPA. It's the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. This initial examination is to determine whether the fire escape is in good enough condition right now for us to proceed immediately to a load test. And right now we cannot. There's a few things that need to be done to it, and then we can proceed to a load test, or we can provide other evidence of strength instead of a load test, which means that if you refurbish this fire escape at this time, then there is no load test. So spot repair and a load test, or full refurb, there is no load test, and it must be kept painted. So let's talk about the paint first of all. The EPA has stated that any fire escape older than 1978 is presumed to have lead, so any fire escape activity on this fire escape, no welding, no cutting, no torching of any kind, no open flame because of the lead on the base. Number two, must have an EPA renovator's license if you're going to scrape and paint this fire escape, which it does need a paint job in order for it to pass the inspection. So that's the first requirement. Most likely, depending on how this gets draped, you might be able to still squeeze a paint job into this, otherwise it might be a spring activity. Let's talk about the structural, which prevents us from load testing. Water has been getting in. There's a lot of original hardware, which is square. There's some welded connections here that only the load test is going to verify, or an x-ray. And so we have a combination of bolt and weld. So a lot of times by simply putting a bolt in that welded connection, and as long as the weld is in good order, put a bolt in it, we negate the need for an x-ray or a load test. In some cases, when we have an opinion on a connection here, we can verify that this is in good order, make sure it's sealed, and then we can load test. Or if you just change this out and put in a new lag screw, so if this is 3/8, we got to go up to a 1/2 inch. Now there is no load test. These welded connections that are, so as you can see a weld, we need to make that a mechanical connection. The through bolts into the building, as you can see, they're exposed. They don't look too bad, but we need to get those sealed up, and so that that through bolt and that through bolt stops getting any water and any intrusion. The grading is another issue. A lot of these spacers are rotting from the inside out. These don't look so bad, but they tend to rot from the inside out. So a lot of times, to avoid the load test, you need to reinforce these so that they don't open up ever into the near future. And you can buy another 5, 10, 15 years more by doing that. Otherwise, the load test of the grading will verify if any of these spacers are rotted from the inside out. This railing is missing a couple of lines in the middle. Should I trip or fall, I will get myself jammed into this, or I will actually pass through and fall to the ground. So we need a couple more lines. That's pre-existing non-conforming, and during the time that it was built, you couldn't do that, so can't grandfather that in. And the railing seems to be like a very, so you got to tie it back in here. You got to have a proper post. You got to tie it back here together. It needs a proper post. Water's getting in here, so these things need to be sealed up. They're all welded at the bottom, so those welds need to be drilled out so that you can avoid x-ray or load test. Treads seem to be in good order, but again, all original hardware, and only load testing will satisfy the code. Or if you want to change the bolt out now, seal it from a water intrusion, you avoid the load test altogether. So let me go down this fire escape and talk about some other issues. As you can see, the railing is lower than it should be, but it is pre-existing. We have trees. We need to clip these trees to get a lot of this away so that there's no obstruction, nothing pokes you in the eye as you're coming down. Okay, and as you can see up there, and I'm going to show it on this one, all the brackets from underneath of that platform up above, as well as the one I'm standing on, is welded connection. This welded connection means that either we have to load test the welded connection, or as soon as we pop a bolt in it, there is no load test. Okay, so staircases I don't have too many issues with, but again, the bolts need to be swapped out to avoid the load test, or we can just load test the entire staircase. A couple more lines of rail on this will make it conform. We need to seal these things so water doesn't get back in here. We got a ladder with original hardware. See how that water gets in here and it rots out the wood. So a lot of times you take this out and you got to upsize. So if this is quarter, you got to go to 3/8. If this is 3/8, you got to go to 1/2 inch. All these rungs on the ladder do pop through, and they are welded on this side. So in case there's a failure on the weld, the rungs are good. So this is an approved ladder, 18 inches wide. The issue with the code is, and we'll have to speak with the city official, doesn't go all the way to grade. So You're not supposed to be jumping to the ground 8 to 10 feet, and that's what's happening down there. So we need to confirm that the building code back in the day when this was fabricated and installed did not allow for you to jump. They're supposed to, you can stop 8 feet from the ground, but then you need to have a sliding ladder that continues the rest. When you release it from up here, it's supposed to drop to the ground. That's not the case. So the city official will determine whether or not a fold-out ladder or a sliding ladder needs to continue to the ground, as represented by that yellow ladder down below. Any welded corner, as soon as you put a piece of flat underneath, put a bolt in the bolt, it negates the need for us to x-ray. So this is one of those fire escapes that I would recommend changing a lot of the original hardware out, putting in new hardware, and you automatically pass the other evidence of strength, and there's no need for a load test for the next 15 to 25 years. You still need to examine it every 5, but you'll be able to provide other evidence of strength. Otherwise, the code is very clear. The authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test every 5 years now. As per the International Fire Code of 2012, every 5 years now, the fire department wants a report and a load test on all fire escapes in the nation. And so this fire escape will have to be load tested every 5. But if you do some modifications, including fasteners and any welded bracket, put a bolt through here, you don't need to deal with this weld anymore. Now you're looking at load test being pushed off for the next 15 to 25 years. Your grading looks like it's in good order, but it still has those spacers, and those spacers, you can't fix those. The only thing you can do is reinforce them, and then during a load test, those will be verified. And on this bracket, as you can see, that part down there, it's welded. You gotta pop a bolt in it. On the nose, that part of it is welded. You gotta pop a bracket or a gusset on there. Okay, so anytime you have any welded connection, to avoid the load test and any liability, you gotta put a bolt in it. Any questions? Fire escape engineer, suspect the summary video. 866-649-0333. This is Inspector Cisco Meneses.